When the new faction Destroyers came out, I had a bit of a problem because I love to fly Brawl Slicers, and Brawl Slicers and Thrasher Fleet Issues don't mix very well together. In fact, Thrasher Fleet Issues became so dominant that they drowned out most other ship types. Regular T1 destroyers, there were almost nobody left, but also a lot of frigates that used to find in the small plexus just disappeared because Thrasher Fleet Issues were just more effective in every role. And whatever I tried, I just ended up dying a lot. They had a combination of too much firepower, too much speed, too much utility and too much tank. Then I decided to try and beat them at their own game. More tank, more DPS. So when I want to beat Thrasher Fleet Issues, I want to have a lot of damage, a lot of tank and decent range. I'm starting with my basic Brawl Slicer, the same lows, so an active armor repair, 2 heat sinks, and if I load conflagration, that gives me with overheat almost 325 DPS with my skills. So that's quite a lot, and it's a solid fit, but the real trick is in the mid slots. I'm having my usual afterburner and a medium shield extender. And yeah, it's quite rare for a ship can be able to fit a medium shield extender and an armor wrapper and also good weapons. But one of the advantages of the slicer is not just its range, but also that it has quite a big power grid. And it needs a big grid because it might need to fit a micro warp drive as well as beam lasers. Both take a lot of grid. And by getting pulse lasers and an afterburner, I can just barely fit a medium shield extender. I took a Republic feat because of the easier fitting room and more hit points, and augmented that with Nirvana implants, which give even more shield hit points, so that in total I'm getting 8.5k effective hit points. With one additional advantage, I'm really hoping that Thrasher Fleet Issues will have explosive and kinetic ammo loaded. Most damage coming from explosive. That means when they shoot at my shields, they will be shooting at my highest resist. So that hopefully will give me enough buffer to put in enough damage to kill them. Of course I still have my active tank in case I meet other ships who have the other ammo loaded, and then I can still tank decently if they have like lasers or something. The first catch of the day, as they would say in the Imperial Navy. Yeah, no special tactics here. I'm just brawling. I'm at my ideal range, so I'm just sitting there and firing at him. It takes him a little while to fire back. And once he starts shooting, I see my shield going down. He's now approaching me, so I'm taking some distance, but yeah, he's much faster. I have no tackle, so. And his hull is slowly going down, and he's thinking like, no, it's too good for me, so I'm getting out of there. So unfortunately, no luck the first time. So second round against a different fit. Even though he starts out close, he immediately takes some distance because he's an artillery Thrasher. So my best ID, and as you can see, he doesn't even have a point. My best tactic is just to orbit him as close as possible without actually going into his web range, which still happens because yes, his web's overheated. But I'm now slowly coasting out of web range, and I'm able to establish an orbit at around 14-15 kilometers. And even though his artillery is still hitting me at this range, I can tank enough to slowly whittle him down. But as before, if they see it coming, they're going like, no, I'm out of here, this is not my game. And this guy as well, he warps. Sometimes they're everywhere, and just when you want to fight them, they're nowhere to be seen. In this case, I have lucky enough and come across 2 regular Thrashers. And let's see how it does against them. as you can see, barely registering any damage. The artillery Thrasher is not hitting me hard, probably explosive. And the Thrasher close by, well, it is not in a good range anyway. So I'm now trying to get the artillery Thrasher. But since he sees me at 0.5%, 50% shield, he's also going like, no, not my cup of tea. And that's a real disadvantage. People just don't know what's happening when they don't see your shield going down. This underlines the importance of psychology in EVE PvP. If people think they can't hurt you because you're kiting, or because if you're normally armored tank ship and they don't get your shields down, they're gonna try and think about escaping because they can't really hurt you. And if they see your armor going down in heaps, they usually think, maybe I get them. In this case, this is a fight with a friend, and in this case I'm doing my duty by tanking both the Catalyst Navy and the Rifter. And yeah, in this case I'm able to face tank them so that we both can kill the Catalyst Navy and then approach the Rifter and see if we can kill that one as well. But in this case the shield buffer really performs its duty of just having me survive those initial volleys from the Catalyst Navy and the Rifter. And even if I wasn't coordinating with this guy, the point certainly helped. Since there are still no Thrasher fleets about, how about a classic fight with an Algos? He's coming into me, so he wants some PvP. And it takes him a little while to get the drones out and put his cram on. By the time he's already in structure. So, yeah, I don't know why he was so slow, but as you can see, the drones, even though he's wrapping and he's having a hull tank, the drones barely do any damage to me. Of course there are 2 Valkyries which do explosive damage, but the Acolytes should be able to get my shields down eventually. But by that time he's long gone. It's a bit like a curse. The Thrasher fleets are always around when you don't want to fight them, and when you do want to fight them, they're nowhere to be found. Since I don't have any tackle anyway, I might as well have some 2 versus 1 fights. Since in those kind of fights, the second pilot usually stays to support his wingman and isn't warping out. In this case it's a Condor, and I'm a bit lazy here. Have to unlock the frigate, and oddly enough the Condor is staying close in, which makes me think, oh shit, it's tracking disruptor, close orbiting Condor, and it indeed puts a tracking disruptor on me, but I hit it a couple of times and then it suddenly zooms off at high speed, so I'm like, is this a kiting Condor? What's going on here? So I'm a little bit confused. His buddy in a Merlin is coming in, but since I'm flying my shield slicer, I'm not worried at all. I have plenty of buffer to survive a Merlin. Since I can't hit the Condor anymore, I might as well lock up the Merlin and kill it, because it's shield tanked, and shield tanks are fairly poor against lasers. And as you can see, I'm not even at 50% shield, even if the Merlin is wailing on me, the Condor still. So, since the Condor is staying out of point range anyway and I can't hit him with the tracking disruptor, I might as well warp out. Okay, let's find out how this shield slicer does in a classic slicer versus slicer fight. Of course the shields won't do very well against lasers, since they have no additional resistances, but since my normal armor tank slicer can win from other slicers, it should be able to win here as well. I'm just curious to see how we will react. Of course, my auto unlock blocks the Rifter. And as you can see, the Slicer is busy at taking down my shields. But he's orbiting me at micro warp dive speed and I still have my afterburner. So his shots are grazing a lot. And this pilot is a fairly smart pilot because he immediately notices this and closes in and changes crystals. But yeah, he still misses me and I think he's just like, what's going on? I can't understand it, and he warps off. And here with the hook bill, another classical slicer opponent. I'm a bit worried since if he orbits me close, because I don't even have a web, I shouldn't be able to hit him if he just webs me, especially with the conflagration loaded. But I'm lucky and he decides to keep me at range. Perhaps he's fitted with polarized launchers and just wants to maximize his damage. In any case, he's in for a surprise because he hasn't popped my shields yet. And yeah, this is a disadvantage of the slicer. If the enemy pilots think they're never going to beat you, they just warp out as soon as possible. This next fight might be a good moment to explain something of the tactics. I'm fighting a Stork here and you don't see him a lot. They're command destroyers, usually in a support role for a fleet. But you can try and solo with them. And the advantage of the Stork, they can put in a real mega tank, a really big shield tank. And even though I'm laser fitted, and so I should have a good advantage against his tank. You're seeing he is tanking fairly well, and he is, because I am now flying forward, a lot of the time his rockets are missing me, especially if he is close by. That's the disadvantage of rockets. His normal range with range rockets is about 8 kilometers, but if you're flying while he's shooting his rockets, the effective range of his rockets is only 6 kilometers, so you see him missing. At some point he changes rockets and he starts hitting me again. But this is a good idea to talk about how a lot of people ask me, without a point, how can you ever kill anyone? The easiest way to do it is take risky fights. If you're almost dying, people usually won't warp out. If they have like a 50-50 chance, or if they think even better chance to kill you, they will stay in the fight. And the best way to do that is not to tank with shields, but to tank in armor or even hull. Armor tank, since you can do it active, is the best, since you can, if you know how much damage is coming in, you can sort of manage the tank and tank just enough so that you're slowly creeping into low damage, even if you overmatch them. So that's how I get a lot of kills. And of course, if hostiles don't have too much of a tank themselves, by the time they see their tank going down, it's often too late. With Thrasher Fleet Issues, that they usually have 10k effective hit points or more, it's just too slow. Even though this fit might be able to beat them in theory, the lack of the point really hurts me here. And I have to go back to the drawing board if I want to go defeat Thrasher Fleet Issues with this fit. Even though it's been fun flying it, and had some weird talks with people afterwards who were like, what? Why wasn't I hitting you? And then I had to explain them that I was actually shielding. Okay, the Stork has finally punched through my armor, so it's time to overheat the afterburner and pull out of his range. So for this last fight I saw a Rifter, and it's also a newer player. So yeah, basically I decided to go easy on him, especially because yeah, with my shield tank I'm not too worried. So I'm just letting him approach and shoot at me a bit, and I'm currently orbiting him at 500 meters, because even Rifters, yeah, have issues in hitting me when you orbit that close. You see a lot of glancing blows and grazing hits, and because he's probably loaded explosive ammo with my shield tank, yeah, I'm not worried about going down anywhere soon. As you can see, no worries here at all. He's now straight lining after me, there's no orbiting anymore, so he can get some better hits in, because he has explosive loaded, yeah, he's not really damaging. And I decide to start return fire and use keep at range, because my lasers are also not hitting at these close ranges. And even though I'm webbed, I'm getting some distance, probably because he forgot his afterburner or something. He's closing again now, but it's way too late for him. And even though he has a tracking advantage, because he's just approaching me, I destroy him. Okay, that was it for the shield slicer.
It's time to say goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.